What's up and welcome back to the Crude Oil Podcast. It's episode 41. There's no shenanigans. There's no, episode dedicated to this player that played for the Edmonton Oilers. Sean, we're fucking here to do business, buddy.
We have made the playoffs. We are playing LA again, and I'm fucking stoked.
Oh my God. It's this time of year, man. The snow starts melting. It gets a little bit. I can't imagine how we got through spring and stuff without playoff hockey because this is the best feeling in the world, especially just the starting point of playoffs.
Honestly, it feels like obviously the season just ended, but like the fact that playoffs start right away gets me so excited because we don't even have any lull to sit here and build up. We have 2 days off and then we're right in it.
Yeah, I know. It kind of sucked that we had to sit through this weekend, sitting there on Saturday not having anything to watch was kind of weird, but yeah,
all I wanted to do was reach out to all my buddies and be like, "Hey, let's watch the hockey game tonight." And it's like, there's no game yet though. Fuck.
Yeah, totally. Well, we'll dive right into things. A bunch of stuff we want to talk about, but we're gonna focus on this series against the Kings and what's coming up first because I mean, I'm chomping at the bit for the games to start, and I'm sure you are, and I'm sure everybody listening is as well. But just some housekeeping stuff we wanted to bring up. Make sure you guys go give us a follow on YouTube and Twitter at Crude Oil Podcast. We're very interactive. Like if you put stuff and you send us stuff, we're going to talk about it on here. And if you want to send questions, if you have comments, if you, feel free to send us a DM on Twitter. We'll bring it up. This is where everyone's getting excited for hockey. So it's fun to interact with everybody listening and just keeping this Oilers train moving. With that being said, Sean and I, we're gonna ramp up the schedule here. We're aiming to record the day after every 2 games. So in this case with the King series, it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday for the first 4 games. So we'll be recording after game 2, like Thursday, in time for the game on Friday. So you have some content to fuel you till those 8 p.m. starts. Hey,
man, this was my biggest concern about playing against LA were the 8 p.m. starts. And for anybody who never saw, we might as well just jump right into it. They scheduled the first 4 games, so we're playing tomorrow, Monday, at 8 p.m., and then Wednesday, 8 p.m., Friday, 8 p.m., and then Sunday at least we get 7 p.m.
Yeah, it's a bit of a break on Sunday, but still, it's and the thing is too, any of these games go to overtime, you automatically have at least 30 minutes booked into your schedule to, flood and intermission and shit like that, right? So it's gonna make for a busy week.
I'm definitely gonna be tired all week, but I'm sure it'll be well worth it.
Yeah, let's get into it. The Edmonton Oilers and the Kings facing off for the second straight playoffs. They split the season record. They're 2-2. LA took the first 2 games, obviously, in the season in Edmonton recently with those 2 wins end of March, early April. So let's dive into the comparison between these 2 teams. I want to focus. I know Edmonton had the season that they had, but one thing that kind of stood out to me is I was looking. I included in our show notes here the lineup that the Edmonton Oilers had going into Game 6 against LA, and just looking at the bottom 6, it was Archibald, McLeod, Puljujarvi, Fogle, Ryan, Cassian, and then everyone knows the D that we had last year. Edmonton's really improved, but I think that's what's getting kind of undershadowed. Not enough people are paying attention to how much improvement the LA Kings have had.
Well, I think I'm not afraid of how much improvement they have, but it's something to keep note of. The big additions to their lineup essentially are Drew Doughty because he's healthy. They have Korpisalo in goal instead of Jonathan Quick. They have Kevin Fiala, who has had a fantastic year after they picked him up. Now I'm trying to remember everybody. They have another year of Gabe Vilardi as he's come along further in his career. Byfield's a year older and much better. And then overall, just some of the younger players have come in and they are just much better than they were. And I think Victor Arvidsson is also healthy this year. He was out last year as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the one I was going to mention. And then obviously the acquisition of Gavrikov too kind of solidifies that back end.
Yeah, you can't forget about Gavrikov. That's one thing. Like a lot of people in Edmonton, for example, there was talk about Edmonton trading for him, obviously. Um, but his stats in Columbus, his underlying statistics were awful. He was one of the worst defensemen in the NHL. But since he's
Yeah.
come to LA, his statistics are some of the best defensive statistics in the NHL.
Yeah, it's definitely a worry. It's definitely a worry heading into the postseason. But I mean, it's no different than some of the teams that Edmonton's played against. Like, uh, it's just a challenge that you have to go up. The Oilers have gotten better as well. Like, we cannot deny that fact.
Well, the additions of pretty much just Ekholm by himself has been insurmountably like the best pickup we've had, dare I say, since Chris Pronger.
Yeah, absolutely. So taking a look at the stats comparison, obviously we mentioned the 2-2 split season record. We've got the kind of comparison of stats up on our side. Out of everything that you've got, Sean, like what is the thing that stands out to you the most?
Well, I think the biggest thing, obviously, it's not, it depends on who you ask. It's not that important playoffs per some people, but then statistics show that there's more penalties called in the playoffs. But it's special teams, specifically the
Yeah.
power play, which I think Edmonton will have this advantage over everybody. Them having a 32.4% power play compared to LA's 25.3%. But it's important to note that LA is actually quite high up in the power play statistics in the NHL. Like Toronto is second with 26%. So LA is
Hmm.
not that far behind. So they're probably, I don't have it in front of me, probably in the top 10, I assume. So, but Edmonton's power play percentage is just unreal. And then
Yeah.
we also walk into PK as well, where we have a 77% compared to LA's 75.8%. So we have the advantage on them there. And that PK percentage of ours, at least, is severely weighed down by the first half of the season compared to the second half.
Yeah. I saw something wild, like the Edmonton Oilers have outscored the like on the PK their opponents like 6-3 in the last like I don't know how many different attempts.
Well, the net PK, or yeah, the net PK percentage. So essentially, if Edmonton deducts the goals that they've scored also on the PK, like from their goals against, at least I think that's probably how the PK percentage should be calculated. Because if you're scoring on the penalty kill, it kind of nets out to zero if they go and score.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
like, they would easily be, I think, top 10 in PK percentage in the league if they had that. Currently, I believe they're kind of middle of the pack, which, honestly, like I mentioned, considering how badly they sucked at the beginning of the year, I think they were like as low as 28th in the league in PK percentage.
Yeah.
The fact that they made it all the way up to, I believe it is like no, they made it to 20th. So that's not as high as I hoped, but it's still pretty average, which I'm okay with considering how elite our power play is.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because when you leverage like how Edmonton's doing and you look at like for instance like goals against even Edmonton was near the bottom last year. And even getting to the middle of the pack is such a huge improvement for this team because you've got the fucking horse that is the offensive side of this club. Like it it's something that I don't think the Oilers have to be the best at.
Well, yeah, especially considering their offense. They don't need to be world beaters in goals against. They don't need to be the Boston Bruins. It doesn't make a huge difference in terms of games when if you win them 5-4 versus 5-1. As long as you're winning the game, that's all that really matters. And they're grossly outscoring their competition in games. And they've proven that they can play at low scoring games as well. You just have
Mhm.
to score more goals than the other team. That's the most important part. And I think
That's
they
so true.
truly began to understand that.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up that's a big difference as well in this series versus last year, but we have a complete overhaul of the goalie situation, like absolute from top to bottom.
Yeah, that's true. There's no goalie who played in last year's matchup, is there? It was Smith
Yeah,
Koskinen versus Quick and Peterson. I can't remember which one actually started. And now we
yeah,
have Skidder and Campbell versus Corpusalo and Copley.
yeah. So based off of that, who do you think has the upper hand in the net?
Well, When it comes to goalie, I want to say, just based off recency bias alone, I feel like Edmonton has to have the advantage because of how well Skinner has played lately.
Hmm.
But in terms of potential to play well in the playoffs, I think out of all the goalies in this series, Corpusalo has shown that he is capable of like playing out of his fucking mind because he did it to, I
Yeah.
believe it was Toronto the one year where they lost to Columbus in the first round.
Yeah, that's right.
So like if Corpusalo can channel his versus Toronto Maple Leafs goaltending, then we might have something to worry about in the goaltending department. But to be fair, ever since that playoff series, Corpusalo has been fairly lackluster, and I think that's part of the reason Edmonton never ended up trading for him in the first place. But
Mhm.
yeah, I would give it to Edmonton, but in terms of potential to get goalied, I would say LA probably has the advantage in that, but I would take the more consistent goaltender versus the streaky, might be able to shut you out goalie.
Yeah. Yeah. I I agree with all those sentiments. I'm kind of worried to see what kind of goaltending LA gets. Obviously, Todd McClellan hasn't confirmed which goaltender's starting. I would be willing to bet that it's Corpusalo, but we'll see how things shake out. We'll get into the lineups here for both teams. Shout out to Oilers Access for actually digging that up and um, getting those all updated. So the Edmonton Oilers go as follows. Um, just also shout out to the Edmonton Oilers, the first team along with Seattle this year to be the first team since the 95-96 Devils to have 12 forwards with double-digit goals. Like speaking of that offensive monster.
Man, what
Um,
happened to us not having depth? That's
yeah,
all
no
I'm gonna
shit,
say.
hey. It's funny. I saw a clip with Jackie Redmond, and she was talking. I think it was Tom Gazzola's podcast, but she was just saying how like McDavid casts such a shadow on the Edmonton Oilers to be like, oh yeah, like when you think of the Oilers, you just think of Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. Even she's like, people outside of the Edmonton market need to take a step back and realize this has been the best team in the NHL since January 11th.
Well, I think it's something people haven't considered, and it's kind of funny that you mentioned like people just see McDavid, they see Draisaitl, and don't think about anything else. Because I was scrolling through Twitter, and I think it was the NHL.com post where they said like Edmonton versus LA is the first round matchup. Like 90% of the comments were like, "We're taking LA. Like two players can't win a playoff series." Blah
Oh
blah blah.
shit.
That's all it was, and like to be fair, I think in prior years, probably not last year, but before that, you probably could have got away with saying that, and a lot of people would
Mhm.
agree with you. But if you say that this year, you're just not paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, jumping into the lineups, the Edmonton Oilers roll as follows: RNH, McDavid, Hyman, Kane, Draisaitl, Yams. We got Fogel, McLeod, Ryan, Costin, Bukestad, and Yanmark. Pretty much status quo. I really, really love that bottom line of Costin, Bukestad, and Yanmark. Those three like gel together really well. I find, especially over the last like 10 games. I just love that grouping.
With that being said, I'd like to issue a public apology to Matthias Janmark for all of the shit I gave him for the first half of the season because he has
I think
turned
I'm
into one of my favorite players on the team.
Yeah, I think I'm guilty of that. So I will jump on that apology as well and sign off because I think I was pretty critical of him. Kind of wondering like where does this guy fit into the lineup? I think it was more like when he was playing with McDavid and stuff like that, but he has found a niche and he is doing it well.
Well, you just need to adjust to a new lineup. And, like, to be fair,
Yeah.
I don't think we were really considering that. And we were kind of shitting on the whole team in the first half of the year,
Yeah.
particularly the bottom six for not contributing. And then they found their game. They found some chemistry. The six guys who were playing down there all got comfortable playing together. And it's really shown.
Yeah. Before we leave him, the uh the question that's going around the internet, and I hate it, but it's always who's gonna be the Fernando Pisani of this year's team. Um, I I think it's Yanmark.
I wouldn't put it past him to be able to do that. But personally, I've put it on Ryan McLeod. But everybody knows that I am obsessed with Ryan McLeod. So,
Of course you did. I would
like,
love to see it though.
I don't see why he wouldn't be able to. He has all the
Yeah.
skills and the tools. He just needs to get the puck luck to go. And
Yeah.
I think he could easily score 10 goals in a deep playoff run.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, taking a look at the back end, we have Ekholm, Bouchard, Nurse, CC, Kulak, and Desharnais. Obviously, if they're rolling six, currently scratched off that grouping is Broberg, but we'll see what ends up happening, how they roll the lines. Obviously, you have Skinner and Campbell together, but just for comparison, looking at last year when we rolled this out, this was the six that we went with. Kulak, CC, Keith, Bouchard, Russell, and Barry.
I think that's going to make me puke, for one. But also, that's one thing that nobody is considering. Like, they keep comparing the additions between LA and Edmonton, but like a healthy Draisaitl and a healthy Nurse is going to make a world of difference for this team and for this series. And people need to show some respect to Nurse playing at 100%.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, Taking a look over at the Kings side of things, their forward group is as follows: Byfield, Kopitar, Kempe. They have Moore, Dano, Arvidsson, Iafallo, Lazat, and Kaliev, Grunstrom, Kupari, and McEwen. Of course, that's not including Kevin Fiala, who's going to magically be healthy for game one, just like Mark Stone in Vegas.
I'm
But,
sure he will be, and Gabe Velarde as well. They are both
oh,
sitting, I
that's right.
believe,
Yeah.
on injured reserve at the moment, but I don't be surprised to see them activated. But from what I was reading, based off of some LA fans who are more up to date on LA stuff, is that they don't believe that either of those two players is likely at 100%, and they will
Mm,
probably be coming more between 70 to 80%. So don't expect them to come back as world beaters, but they are both talented enough to make a huge difference for LA.
definitely. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, what capacity are they going to join the team in? That third line for the Kings is actually one that kind of scares me. Fallow, Lazat, and Kaliev. That's a really solid third line for that team.
Well, one thing that LA does not lack is that middle six kind of like, I'm not going to say league average, but just middle six wingers who can play anywhere in the lineup. Like you mix in Kempe, Trevor Moore, Iafallo, Kaliev, like those guys are all probably between second, if not like a high end third line wingers. So
Yeah,
they have a gross amount of just talented wingers on that team, and it's something that we need to be probably aware of when we're rolling lines and rolling our D pairings is that you can't take a shift off against this team because they have a lot of depth themselves.
yeah. Yeah. Shifts off are going to be noticeable for sure. Um, Looking at the back end, Mikey Anderson, Drew Doughty. They've got Gavrikov, Roy or Waugh. I always
I
screw that
believe
up.
it's
Is that
Roy.
yeah? Dursey and Walker. Um, Oddly enough, I'm not too worried. I mean, Gavrikov being Gavrikov is the biggest concern for me. I think Drew Doughty's at the point in his career where yes, it's Drew Doughty. Yes, you can't take away the accolades that he has. I think he's starting to like come down from the peak of his career. I don't see him as the threat that he used to be, and we've seen McDavid walk him on like several occasions. I don't know if that's just me.
I think I do agree with you that Doughty's probably more on the decline of his career. He's certainly not at his peak anymore, but he's not a terrible defenseman by any stretch of the imagination. He's just not worth $10 million. With that being
Yeah.
said, I don't even think that necessarily his defensive play is the reason that we should be concerned about Doughty. It's a combination of his leadership skills and the experience that he has and his ability to help that young defense core like handle adversity, which he wasn't able to do
Mhm.
last year. And then as well as he is an absolute piece of shit guy on the ice and he will drive this Oilers team fucking bananas. And I can see him
Yes.
getting under Evander Kane specifically skin cuz people like to try and get under Evander Kane's skin. And I
Yeah.
can see something happening with that specifically. And maybe Doughty being a like just a fuck for McDavid and Draisaitl to deal with the whole time because he's playing with Mikey Anderson, and I almost guarantee that Anderson will be matched up against one of those top two guys all the time.
Yeah. It's funny you brought up the kind of under the skin stuff and then transition to Mikey Anderson. We're already starting to see like stuff brewing with obviously the history with Leon Draisaitl last year, and then the McDavid hit on Anderson and on the April 4th game. Like things are starting to build up, and we haven't even like dropped the puck on game one.
I'm concerned about getting out of this series healthy.
Yeah, that's a
I'm
good point.
I'm not going to say anything like along the lines of any of these LA players are going to intentionally take runs at anybody, but I
Mhm.
imagine that this is going to be a chippy as fuck series. People are going to be slashing and cross checking and all that little fucking shit that's just going to drive guys up the wall. And it
Yeah.
could really add up after a while. You get slashed in the same leg a bazillion times, like your fucking leg's going to be bruised to shit and you're going to lose your fucking mind.
Yeah, like if you look at the entire Western Conference playoff bracket, like if you look in terms of grittiness and like kind of chippy teams, LA's got to be number one there. Like I would put Dallas probably second, um, more so because Jamie Benn's a piece of shit to play against. He's a pain in the ass. Um, but yeah, like this is that's a great point. I never even thought of that because like if you want to take a step back and look at this, like Sean, if we're gonna march to the Stanley Cup, we're likely gonna have to go through L.A., Vegas, Colorado, and Boston. Like
Yeah, that's a
that's not a
long series to play against all those teams.
exactly, especially if you're not at 100%. So that's a great point.
Well, to be fair, I don't think we are struggling. To be fair, I'm not 100% certain with any
Yeah.
injuries on this team. I believe I read on Twitter just before this that Yamamoto did take a puck to the face and the
Oh,
like nose area, but I think he's okay. I think he had to get off to like get off the ice to go get looked at, but I never saw an update on whether or not he was 100% okay yet.
huh. Yeah, that's one to keep tabs on. Um, Speaking of chippiness, though, you know what's kind of nice is not having to deal with that fucking rat fuck Brendan Lemieux this year.
That is true. I'm very happy that he ended up getting traded. Like, I would argue that LA is a lot more of a skill team than they were last season. That's for sure, based off of
Hmm.
some of the additions that they've brought in and some of the subtractions, like Lemieux, like you mentioned. And
Yeah,
I think it kind of supports the fact that Edmonton actually out hit LA this year, which does not sound like something you would hear. Like, say, for example, 5 years ago, LA should be number one in the league in hits every year. But
yeah, yeah.
with some of those guys gone, like was Dustin Brown still around last year? Like
I can't remember.
I
I
can't
feel
remember
like
off
he
the top of my head.
retired like in the regular season,
Well, he
so I
would
don't
have
know if
played out the
yeah,
playoffs, but I think he
yeah,
announced his retirement. But I do not remember, unfortunately. I'm gonna
yeah.
look that up while we move on. But it's something to consider too. Is that Edmonton, especially with guys like Desharnais, they are a
Hmm.
lot bigger and I think scarier than they were in previous seasons, and we could potentially impose our will on this LA team.
Yes, absolutely. I think we could definitely lead the physicality in this series. Um, and if you look at the game, like on April 4th, like they kind of did. So
So just for
um,
reference, Dustin Brown was playing last year.
okay, yeah. Yeah, I feel like they had like a retirement ceremony or something like in the regular season, but obviously it's because you don't want to go on a send off on a elimination game.
Yeah, I'm sure they had
But
the old handshakes and stuff like that during the regular season and then just play out the playoffs as is.
yeah, totally. Last piece that I've just got on here, everyone can rest assured that Stuart Skinner's stash is not going anywhere. Uh, that was a very important question, probably the best question Mark Spector's asked all year. But just making sure uh, he's gonna trim it up and make sure that it rides for a long summer. So I think the vibes are set there. I, I always find the playoff beard stuff fascinating. I don't know why.
I just like to see which players can grow monstrous beards, but they always clean shave, so you didn't know it. And then other players that can't grow a fucking thing.
I don't know if you remember back in 2006, but Michael Pekka, he would shave because he could grow like a full beard in like a day and a half. He would shave like every like 5 games, and it ate me up inside. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
He's
It's
just like,
just
I need to
yeah.
do it. I can't not do it.
Too funny. We were contemplating whether or not to recap the season, but with everything going on, like let's save that for the summer. There's just been so much going on with this series. I'm sure we'll appreciate it more in the summer when you sit back and take a look and just see everything that's happened. So with that being said, just want to dive in some other stuff that's been going on. The Oilers announcing is today, hey, about Deneen signing to a 1 year, two-way contract. I don't even know if we've mentioned, but we're recording this Sunday. It should be out Monday morning, just in time for the game. But anyways, um, yeah, this guy came over in the Nick Bukestad trade.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm interested in this signing. I would hope that he sticks around down in Bakersfield, as we probably have a bit of a hole in terms of defensemen down there.
I was gonna
And
say, yeah.
it looks like he's been fairly productive. I haven't kept up with the Bakersfield Condors too much. Um, Speaking of which, actually, like moving on from
Hmm.
Denis, like that's cool. Signed a contract. Good to
Yeah.
see. We'll talk about him maybe in the offseason and what the future holds with some of these young defensemen in our decor. But speaking of Bakersfield, which players are they going to call up as their like quote unquote black aces for the playoffs?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of hoping to find today. I was searching all around, but um, I would be willing to bet that you're gonna obviously have Dylan Holloway come up.
For sure.
What's the status? As I was putting together like notes of everything that's gone on. Where the fuck has Tyler Benson been?
That is a good question. I haven't heard much of anything about him this year, which is a little disappointing as he had such a great camp and then a not so great start of the season. But yeah, I don't
Yeah.
remember hearing too much about him. Looking just at statistics this year, he's only played 43 games down in Bakersfield as opposed to the full, I believe, 72 game season they play. So
Hmm.
it's possible that he's struggling with injuries at the moment, which would not surprise me based off of his track record.
Yeah. Very weird. I was just like, what the fuck? I thought this was supposed to be the year that he takes a step forward, but evidently not. I would think uh back to that question, I think you definitely would lean on a Jason Demers for the back end to be called up.
Yeah,
What
that'll
about
probably
Niemelainen?
happen. Niemelainen will definitely get called up. I think unfortunately, he's under Broberg in terms of call ups, in terms, or sorry, when just guys who are going to actually play. But
Hmm.
do you know if Bakersfield actually made the playoffs this year?
I don't actually. That's a great question. It's probably something I should know, but
Maybe it's if anybody's listening to this and they're like, why the fuck don't you guys know more about Bakersfield? Let us know if you're actually interested in like talking about the Condors in
yeah,
general. And
yeah.
like we can definitely like follow them a little bit more closely. Personally, I don't follow them too much just because like it's a lot of time out of the day just to follow the Oilers in general, but I've always been curious about following them more closely.
I I'm betting that they didn't make playoffs. They had a 37-31 record, so
I,
lowest
I'm
point total they've had in a bit.
I'm reading right here from 10 days ago. Bakersfield Condors clinched a berth in the Calder Cup playoffs with a 3-0 victory over the Colorado Eagles.
Well, fuck me, Greg. Jeez.
Way to
Okay.
go,
Well,
Jesus.
there you go. That's a great question to ask, though. I wonder if that's something I should pay more attention to.
Well, it's something to note because the only reason why I'm curious is I don't think any of these guys are going to get called up until they're eliminated from the playoffs.
Hmm.
Or we have injury
One
troubles, one or the other.
one thing I wanted to ask you is, I don't know if I've been trying to also find the status of this, but where is Ryan Murray at with a potential return?
If I'm not mistaken, he was out for the season when they announced his injury.
Okay.
I believe
Yeah,
it
because
was too serious, so they just shut him down for the entire year. And people are thinking that I trying to remember now, but I thought I heard rumors that his career might be over because of it if it was that bad. But
yeah.
I could not, for the life of me, recall exactly what's going on with that. But it's been far too
Yeah.
long for him to be on there, so I am fairly concerned about his actual status.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I'm like, this is why we got to do more research beforehand. Just 3 days ago, his update is he was loaned to Bakersfield on a conditioning assignment on Thursday.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, there has not been a single update on Ryan Murray since January 17th, and they just issued one 3 days ago.
Okay, there you go. It's timely, eh?
Very timely. It looks like they're probably he will be one of our depth D-men on the back end to bring in a veteran presence if there's any sort of issues with probably Broberg, for example, stepping in if we have an injury in the top six defensemen.
Yeah, yeah. Nice to have that veteran presence as well.
For sure.
Okay, two things I kind of want to see in the playoffs. Maybe I'll open it up for discussion so you can add your two thoughts in here. First off, the wave. I saw it again. Oddly enough, I saw it in a Blue Jays game, and I'm like, for fuck's sakes, will this thing just die already? I understand I'm an old grump, but if we're gonna do it, can we please do it when it's 7-0? Like, there's got to be a rule. Like, if there's not a 3-goal gap, do not do the wave.
Yeah, I would argue that a 3 goal minimum should be like this is obviously an unwritten rule of sports in
Yeah.
general, but for hockey specifically, it should be like your team needs to be slaughtering them. It should be 3 goal minimum, if not more, because I've seen too many 3 goal leads been blown in NHL history. So imagine just being that guy at the Toronto Boston game all those years ago, trying to do the wave when they're up 4-1. You don't want to be
Oh,
that guy.
well, like I'm a Red Sox fan, and every like middle eighth, they always sing "Sweet Caroline," whether they're like in a 2-1 game or a fucking they're getting blown out the doors off 10-0. Like we don't need to have these like shticks going on. Like I don't know. Maybe I'm too serious about how I watch hockey, but
Well, personally, if I'm at a game and the wave
yeah.
starts, I'm gonna be like, ugh, in the first place, because I don't fucking love the wave. But if it's a close game or we're losing, I'm definitely not participating in the slightest. But if I've had a few drinks, we're up like a few goals, and I'm like, I can do the fucking wave. Like, I'll probably do the wave.
That's too funny. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is, can we please bring back the goalie chants that we used to have in the early 2000s? Those are my favorite things in the world. Remember those like Edmonton Journal foam sticks that they used to hand out to fans, and it used to look like you're pointing like the Belford chants are a piece of my childhood.
Like, this is like the old, like, you take your arm and you're like,
Yeah,
Belfour,
yeah,
Belfour.
exactly.
As much as I want that to be a thing, it'll be probably hard to do it with Corpusalo because that's a few too many syllables.
Oh fuck, I never thought of
So,
that.
Corpusalo, Corpusalo.
I guess you'd have to go Jonas, right?
Oh,
I don't know.
Jonas, that's true. Jonas works, but I don't trust enough of the fans in the stands to know what his first name is.
Yeah, that's fair. There's, I'm sure people listening to this are be like, Greg, you just said the waves like stupid. Why the fuck are you adding another gimmick? So I can see how I'm kind of coming off here hypocritical.
I'm
But
just happy that we don't have
um,
to deal with Nashville in the playoffs this year, and their 10,000 chance that they do. They are cool, but fuck, they get old and annoying after a while.
yes, 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 very true. Jumping around the league, the first thing, I mean, here I go again, like contradicting everything I just fucking said, but I love the whiteout. I think it's so cool to see.
I don't mind it. That's about all I could say. Is like
Yeah, sure,
I
yeah,
love to see people wearing like the correct jerseys in the crowd and stuff, but
yeah,
like in Winnipeg it makes sense, like they do that, but at the same time, if you're wearing a home jersey, you're pretty much like, oh, why are you wearing that? You got to wear the white. It's like, no, I want to wear this $300 home jersey that I bought.
yeah. That's a good point. You come to the game and it's like take it off and put on a $20 T-shirt we just gave you.
Well, at least in like
Yeah,
Calgary, for example, they have the Sea of Red or whatever, and their
right.
away jerseys at least have some red on them. Like the home
Hmm.
jerseys for the Jets, I don't believe they actually have any predominant things of white. Like there's no white on the shoulders or anything like that, besides maybe a stripe or two. So like
Right.
that would kind of annoy me. Like, say you went to an Oilers game and you're wearing like one of their jerseys or something, like the old like oil drop ones that
Yeah.
don't have any orange on them. They're like, oh, we're doing Sea of Orange this year, so you just get like shit
Yes.
talked for not wearing orange or something like that. Like, just go to the game, cheer fucking loud, and enjoy the game. Like,
Yes.
The whiteout is cool, but at the same time, I'd be fucking annoyed.
Yeah, that's a great counterpoint. It's, I can't, especially if you're gonna drop money like that on a jersey. Yeah, I'm not gonna put on a t-shirt. Um, it's funny you bring up Calgary because holy shit, I have never LOL'd out loud so fucking much when I was watching those like exit interviews. Did you see any of them?
I believe I watched a clip from the Jonathan Huberdeau one, but I cannot, for the life of me, remember it now off the top of my head.
So there was a couple of them. They were talking to Backlund about like whether or not he's gonna be coming back to Calgary. He's like, "Yeah, we have a great group here, like stuff like that." He says, "But I'm 34 and I'd like to win a cup, so uh, we'll see." It's like okay, and then they had Lindholm with them as well, who basically said the same thing. It's like non-committal. Um, they asked uh, what the hell's the Zadorov? I forgot his name. What he like the thing he's learned out like the most about himself during this season, and his response is like, "I need to get a bottle of vodka in me before I can answer that question." And then they fucking Mackenzie Weegar. They asked him what it was like coming to the rink to be with the guys, and his like first comment out of his mouth is like, "Well, I think we should get a new rink, huh?" Like, just they don't fucking want to be there, man.
Well, I do feel for guys like Backlund and now Lindholm, who have been there for a while, especially Backlund because he's been there for a long time, where they watch this team pretty much go on a huge high into last year, and then
Hmm.
all of a sudden all these like young guys that they brought in who were supposed to be the cores of the team, that guys like Backlund and Lindholm, that would support that core and be
Hmm.
like Lindholm, for example, would be the Nuge to Calgary. And then all of a sudden, like, everybody just leaves and they're like, what the fuck are we supposed to do? And you bring in a guy like Huberdeau who struggles, and like, I feel for Huberdeau, don't get me wrong, I felt really bad during his exit interviews because they kept asking him like these hard questions where it's just like, why did you play so poorly? And it's just like, well, how was he supposed to answer that, honestly?
Yeah, what do you say?
Like, it's just, it was gross to hear, and I do feel for some of those players. um, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised to see a guy like Backlund, like he's still on contract into next season. So is Lindholm, but I would not be surprised to see them either a request a trade next season, especially at the trade deadline, to some sort of team that's actually contending, or even just walk in free agency if they don't trade them.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what they do there. Um, Speaking of coming to the rink, the other note I just had is Pittsburgh missing playoffs for the first time in 16 years. It's crazy to think that they've been part of the picture for that long. But I don't want to lose this thought because I didn't include it. But the Bo Horvat shit in New York, like that response on that on ice interview was wild. And for those of you who uh, don't know what I'm talking about, he was being interviewed on the ice, and the on ice reporter or whatever was just asking him what's it like coming to this rink, and he said he loves it. The fans are crazy, and he decided somewhere in his brain that he should say it's a hell of a lot better than being in Vancouver. I'll tell you that for free.
I
That is some harsh shit.
I think that was more of a heat of the moment thing that slipped out, and I would target that more toward management and
Yeah,
ownership than the fans
right.
themselves. Because let's be honest, Vancouver fans are some of the most passionate fans about their
Yeah.
team. They love their team. They don't have much else going on out there, so they just fucking live and die Canucks. And
Hmm.
with that, to be fair, comes with a lot of negative, like, media attention on these players. And I don't think Horvat was one of those players, though, to be fair. So I give him a pass on that. And he did come out and apologize for that comment and kind of said it was
Yeah.
a heat of the moment, like, my bad kind of moment. But yeah,
Hmm.
you don't want to be caught saying shit like that. Like, if McDavid or something eventually left and said something like that, I'd be like, are you fucking kidding me?
Right. Right. Um, I listened to Missing Curfew. I think those guys have a great banter back and forth. But Shane O'Brien obviously had his years in Vancouver. If you get a chance to go listen to it, he absolutely tears Bo Horvat apart. He's like basically just talks about how I understand that you're upset with management, but that came off as like taking a shot at the fans, like you mentioned, Sean. Um, but he's like, these fans are not gonna forget. Like the apology means nothing to them. And he's like, you got to remember, you were the captain of this fucking team, and the entire time you were here, like the team didn't do shit. That falls on your shoulders. And just absolutely tore him apart for like 5 minutes. It was wild.
I mean, like,
Um,
I get tearing into him a little bit because you have to like watch what you say. Um, I have two somewhat counterpoints to that. One being that I would say Bo Horvat was far from the problem in Vancouver. He was one
yeah,
of the few players who was playing super well at the beginning of the year. And to be fair, they did kind of get their shit together later in the year, and Elias Pettersson had a career year, so good for him. But oh man, don't tell me I lost my other point. Oh, I lost my other point.
damn it.
I hate when that shit happens.
Well, if it comes back to you, we'll circle back. But I figure we'd wrap up the episode here. Just ripping through some predictions. We're not gonna get into the Edmonton series unless you want to. Um, but I figure we just go around the horn and see what your picks are for, I guess, this round of the bracket.
All right.
Okay, Sean, Colorado, Seattle.
Well, I think it's pretty safe to go with Colorado. I do not believe in the goaltending of Seattle in the slightest. Um, I would not be surprised to see this one be a sweep, but I would probably say Colorado in five.
Yeah, I I'll full admission, um, in my degenerate gambling, I needed something to be kind of the underdog pick. I did have Seattle, but I think the rational part of my brain is starting to kick in and be like, yeah, I don't think Seattle goes in 4 or 5. I think it's going to be a 6 or 7 series though.
Well,
Um,
I respect that. I would argue that this series is probably the most one sided series in the entire league, outside of maybe
yeah, that's
Boston and Florida because Boston's Boston.
I think that's fair. I would counter the Boston Florida series. Florida's on a bit of a tear lately, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how those two teams shake out. But before we head there, Dallas, Minnesota, who you got?
Well, like I feel like most of these outside of one of them that I know already know I want to talk about afterwards is like I will take the favorite, which would be Dallas. This will be a close
Yeah,
series. I would say like Dallas in 6, but I've seen what Ottinger can do. I know what Robertson and Hintz and the revitalized corpse of Jamie Benn have been able to do this year. So
yeah.
I could see them beating Minnesota, and I just don't see it any other way, honestly.
Y- Yeah, I have Dallas in 5. I think it's another first round exit for Minnesota. I'm kind of with you too, like looking at the down the we can rip through them then. Vegas, Winnipeg, I've got Vegas in probably 5.
I
I
actually have Vegas in 6 only because I think Hellebuck can steal series. Winnipeg is the
That's
one
such a
team
point.
that we were going to potentially play that I did not want to play because I am
Yes.
afraid of a good goalie.
Yes. Yes. It's funny we put up a poll and our buddy Carter Potts responded and he was saying how he's like I don't want to play Winnipeg or the only team that he wanted to play was Seattle because like we just find a way to run into goalies that goalie us. And it's such a good point because it seems like every time we run into like a goaltender that's had one decent year decides to be a Vezina Trophy winner in that game. So yeah, I'm kind of nervous. Even Corpusalo's still like, we'll see.
Well, like I mentioned,
Um,
Corpusalo has that potential to be a series stealing goalie. So I'm really hoping that that is in his past and he doesn't channel his prior seasons, but it's something to consider and I think our offense could outscore whatever he can bring.
yeah, yeah. Toronto, Tampa Bay.
Toronto,
Do you do
Tampa
it?
Bay.
Do you do it?
I'm going to
Do you do it?
probably take Toronto.
Uh, it
I'm only
happens.
taking Toronto because I do want to see them get past the first round, but only for one reason, and that's to see them get slaughtered in the second round to Boston.
You just rather them get beat up by a different team. That's too funny. I mean, yeah, yeah. I think I honestly I think it's time Toronto like makes it past this. I say 7. They'll beat Tampa, but yeah, I don't see a lengthy run, especially with them running into Boston
Well, this is
again.
definitely the 7-game series I see. Like out of all of the series, this is the one I would argue
Hmm.
is the closest, next to maybe the last one we talk about.
Yep.
But it would be pretty cathartic for Toronto to win the first round, get past Tampa, and then if they manage to beat Boston in the second round, like imagine the catharsis that is for
Ooh.
the Maple Leafs and their fans to pretty much
Ooh.
kill 2 of their demons in 2 separate rounds.
That's a good point. Ooh,
Like I
interesting.
don't want to see it happen because I don't
Yeah.
like Toronto,
Yeah.
but like it would be pretty cool to see.
Yeah, that's yeah. Boston, Florida. I got Boston and 5.
Yeah, but this is like next to the Colorado series. This one I could see as a sweep as well, only
Mhm.
because I don't really trust any of the goaltenders in Florida at the moment. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Florida steal a game at home or something like that. So, yeah, we'll say in 5 as well. I agree with that.
Okay. Rangers, Devils.
This is the other series I was talking about that I believe is one of
Yes.
the closest because I
Hmm.
am not a diehard Devils fan, but I am certainly a Devils fan, and I think they are a fantastic team this year. But it's hard to bet against a goalie like Igor Shesterkin. I really like what he brings as well, but
Hmm.
I'm going to have to take the somewhat homerish pick and take New Jersey, but it'll be in 7. There's no way this series doesn't go 7.
Yeah. As someone who doesn't have a horse in the race, I have the Devils also advancing too. I think it's going to be 7 as well. Um, I agree. I think honestly, in my eyes, I think this is going to be the tightest series outside of Edmonton, LA. That being said, the final one, we have the Islanders and the Hurricanes doing battle. I I don't see a way that the Hurricanes get out of this round just because of how banged up they are. I don't see it.
See
So I have the
this,
Islanders in
I
6.
ag- I agree, and I wish you didn't agree with me because I wanted to
Oh.
have fun and argue with you, but I pick the Islanders as well because I
Yeah.
cannot. I've talked about goalies in these series, and you cannot deny Ilya Sorokin, and
No.
missing Pacioretty, missing Svechnikov for Carolina. Like I just don't see how they're going to score.
Yep. I'm with you. I'm with you. It sucks to not have a point to disagree with or argue with, but it's just they're too banged up, and the Islanders net is just rock solid. So that being said, we head into game 1 and game 2. We'll join you after game 2. But Edmonton, get fucking ready. It's playoff season. I love seeing all the cars. I love seeing all the flags and shit. Let's get loud. Let's fucking get it.